Round 10 of the Tartar Steel chess tournament was played in The Hague, so the tournament went on the road again, and no doubt the organisers were hoping that the players would put on a good show. However, the top board clash between Vasil Ivanchuk and Magnus Carlsen ended in a sterile draw very quickly. Ivanchuk had the white pieces and really didn't risk anything at all. So Carlsen still in the lead with that draw, so that's certainly not going to be my game of the day today. I've picked the game between Baadur Jobava from Georgia and Fabiano Caruana representing Italy. Now, we've seen that Jobava is such an unorthodox, unpredictable, exciting player. And sadly, his play in this tournament is not paying any dividends so far. He has, the start of today, 1.5 out of 9. Caruana started very well in the tournament, but slipped up, and he has 5 out of 9. But of course, he's looking to score a win to try and chase Carlsen and the others. So we pick up the game after 35 moves. So Caruana with black, and you can see that he has a dominating centre with these pawns. He has a wonderfully placed knight on f3 right in the heart of white's king position. So black with a huge space advantage here, and yeah, Jobava has played in a very unorthodox style. But with Caruana running short of time, an indication actually clearly that Caruana is really off colour in this tournament, Jobava seized his moment. Now this knight has landed on f3, it attacks the rook, and if white were to back down here, that would be fatal. I think playing passively would just play into black's hands. Jobava knows when to strike out. He sacrificed the exchange. Rook takes pawn. And this is a tricky position to deal with. Suddenly white is becoming active, and he has got space on the king's side at least, with this knight on g4, possibly coming into one of these squares. So the queen has to move, queen b6. And now, sacrifice number 2, rook takes knight, the second exchange sacrifice. And here, Caruana, short of time, probably missed the best chance, which was to, before taking the rook, to play bishop takes knight here. Now it's very complicated, but this is probably the best. And then taking on b2, and that bishop still covers the knight here. That's probably the best idea. Or if pawn takes bishop, then you take it. And, well, yeah, this is a very difficult position for white. So, for example, check. This is the only chance to take this pawn. But then white actually loses this knight in the middle because of this pin, and black should be winning that position. But very hard to see when you're short of time. Instead, Caruana selected the most obvious move, which also looks good for black after this, although Jobava has compensation for the material deficit. Still seems as though black is in control here. So he's got 2 rooks against 2 bishops, a very unusual material balance, and of course it looks like there are threats to white's king as well. Well, there are. So, well, they'd reached the time control here, so the players had time to think things through. e4, so that blocks the diagonal and threatened king takes knight. So the knight moved to d2. Looks like an excellent square, and here I thought at first sight it seems as though Caruana is doing very well. There's pressure on this pawn here, and suddenly it looks as though the initiative is swinging around in black's favour, as well as, of course, as this huge material advantage. But Jobava was still fighting. He played bishop here. Now, if knight... Well, first of all, Caruana threw in c3. I think it's probably a good idea. And Jobava played b4. And now, if knight takes pawn, this could have been played on the last turn as well, and this, again, would have been the correct reply, and that pin is very unpleasant for black. Caruana played rook d6. I think it's a good move. If black can eliminate this knight and clear up any threats against black's king and then crash through the middle, then that should be very good. But still not so clear. Queen e1. Queen lends some protection to e4. And now, this is possible. One can take this off. But this is a strong move. And even though black reaches an endgame, in fact, Caruana judged correctly that white still has pretty good compensation here for the exchange, in the shape of these two bishops and possibly this pawn, and this pawn are weak. So instead he played rook bd8. Another point is that's an extra rook covering this square, then he really is threatening to sack back the exchange. So queen h1 from Jobava, threatening of course queen h6 mate. So this was taken. Jobava gave a check and the king came back. Now, I mean, this is a very long forcing sequence actually. Pawn takes rook, threatening mate, so black has to take. And it looks as though the situation is clearing in black's favour. Black's king seems safe, but suddenly bishop h4. Incredibly, white is still in the game because of this tactic. I mean, it's such an unusual position with strange tactical motifs. So the queen moves, queen d4. White takes the rook. And now queen, instead of queen takes bishop, queen takes e4 check is a good move. Starting to hassle white's king. And here, even though Jobava had loads of time, they've passed the time control at move 40, he played this next move in under a minute. Unfortunately, he made a terrible blunder. He could have played king f2. This is the only safe square for the king, actually. And now black gives a check. The king moves to the side, and now queen takes bishop. So black has picked up the bishop. So in fact, it's equal material now, but the king is a bit exposed. This bishop is poorly placed, and seems as though black still has some chances here, but white has a fantastic move here. I should say that this is a computer suggestion. Perhaps Jobava thought he was simply worse here and looked for an alternative to this. But bishop e6 is an amazing move. Beautiful move, actually. First thing to note is what happens if this is taken. In fact, white has a draw here. Draw by perpetual check. For example, if the king moves here, we check. Now the only way out of the checks for black is to cross the d file. But then queen d3 is a good move. If the king steps over here, then queen takes pawn, followed by queen takes knight. So the king has to go back, and we're actually just repeating the position here. Let's go back. If black doesn't take it, for example, plays queen f6, and now that prevents the queen g6 move, then after bishop d5, now that is a very nice improvement of the position of black's bishop. You can see, of white's bishop, you can see that the bishop controls any squares that the knight wants to go to. And white should have sufficient play here. The queen can perhaps come back here. So king f2 probably would have held the game for white. Instead, Jobava played king g3, and well, we've seen on so many occasions how deadly the combination of queen and knight are, and now there is no escape for the king. If king h3, then, well, you don't even need to take the queen. Knight e4 is mate, and the game finished instead. King g2, check, and now the knight comes in. threatening knight g3, and that's going to be the end of the road. If bishop h4, then queen h2 is mate. I'm afraid the queen no longer plays a role in the defence. Such a disappointment for Jobava. I feel really sorry for him. He played such original chess in this game, had a difficult position but fought back absolutely brilliantly. But still, it just shows at this level consistency really pays, and the best players, well, Carlsen particularly, show consistency in their games. They don't make any blunders, or very rarely make blunders. So after 10 rounds, Carlsen's still in the lead with 7.5 points. Wesley So and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave on 6.5, a point behind. They both drew today. Ivanchuk, Ding, Giri and Caruana all on 6 points. Tomorrow is a rest day, and round 11 is back in Wijk aan Zee, and that's played on Friday. See you then.